When I arrived back in New York, taking that trail way back again, with nowhere to go, but I had a job. If you got a job, you got a lot of flexibility, and you could you could really learn some stuff. Learn how to leverage what you have, or whether you have nothing or whatever. But as long as you got a job, you have possibilities. So I started. I applied for a job at Chase Manhattan when I got back. And, back in those days, you could just walk right in to Chase or Manny Hanny or Chemical Bank and just apply, and they test you and all this kind of stuff. So I went back to Chase, and this was at One New York Plaza. It wasn't the same department that I left from the past prior to going to Elizabeth City State, but due to the fact that I had worked there, I was given, a little extra boost from that because I had some experience. And on top of that, I had 1 year of college, which back then was critical. It did, separate me from a lot of folks. So I did leverage that. So anyway, one of the things that they did back then, back that time, during that time, now I'm talking in the 70s, and they would test you. They would perform eye tests on you. They don't do that anymore. But back then, I remember having the eye test, and I couldn't pass the test. I couldn't see well. All right. And I've always worn glasses, but I had broken my glasses some months before. But I tried. I tried to make it. I tried to go without them. But this test to pass the application process at Chase, I had to pass the eye test. So I could not pass it. I needed glasses. So I tried. I didn't know anybody. I was basically sleeping on the train back and forth again when I wasn't working. And so what I did was I called a guy down south, one of my childhood acquaintances. He was older than me. But anyway, my trumpet, I had a silver trumpet that Mom bought me. Right. And people that know me from North Carolina know that I was the greatest trumpet player in Williamston. Not just, and I'm not going to brag, but I was, the number one guy when it came to high school. But going on to college, yeah, okay. Then we get some sanity and we wake up because of the people from around the country that you see. But I digress. Going back to the job situation, so I couldn't pass the eye test at Chase, so I needed glasses, and I didn't have the money. And the glasses were about $30 back then. I didn't have the money. I didn't know anybody that would give it to me. So I approached one of my acquaintances, as I said earlier, from down south, and I asked him for a loan, and. And he loaned me some money, and my collateral was my silver trumpet. So I said, okay, well, give me 30. Just make sure that you have my trumpet ready when I have the money, and that should be shortly. So I took that $30, and I got my glasses. But one thing I would never forget: before I got to going down, trying to borrow money from someone down south, I went to the welfare office. All right. All I needed was $30 for a pair of glasses. All right. I go in there and I go to the reception area and I tell the guy, I need to see someone because I need glasses. He said, okay, what you got to do? You got to fill out an application, blah, 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 blah. Then you have to go on welfare. I have never been on welfare, so I said, nah, that's okay. Y'all guys, all I need is $30. I don't want to go on welfare. I need $30 to get this job. And they declined. So that led to me having to borrow money from someone from down south. And I never saw my trumpet again, by the way. So I get my glasses. I start my job at Chase at One New York Plaza. And where possible, I'm going to show you all pictures, or you can probably see it in the show notes, and we'll try to link some of these photos of the areas. All right, but anyway, I get the job at New York Plaza at Chase, and it's history after that. Now I do want to just say that during that time in the early to mid 70s, in that area on Water Street in lower Manhattan near the ferry, man, it was rocking down there back then. Man, we had the disco days. Those were the disco days. And the thing is, I worked at One New York Plaza on Water Street. You had Chemical Bank, Manny Hanny. You had a few other big banks back then that were on Water Street. And it was a disco time. All right. And believe it or not, folks, they had discos. You could go on your lunch hour and go to a disco. Some of them were down in the basements of some of these large buildings. And I mean, really, you could go and rock. And then after 5, you can go and you can rock and dance some more. That which was unusual. But anyway, this is the early 70s. And Chase back then was a 24-hour operation. I mean, you had 3 shifts. All right. So there were people working 24 hours a day. Their cafeteria was open 24 hours a day. They had a movie theater in there, in the lounge area. I mean, this was really, really something. It was amazing that they would have something like that, looking back at it. But back then, people didn't pay attention to money in terms of their employees the way they do now. You know, it's a different thing now. They want to get rid of you. Back then, they were trying to hire you, and you were the resource of choice. Not anymore. But I digress again. But getting a job at Chase, and I was hired in a department called the Money Transfer Department, International Money Transfer. Remember that name, because I will be referring back to that, because that became my career is in money transfer and foreign exchange when I get to that point. But money transfer is where I started at in the bank. International money transfer. So my first week, they sat me with a gentleman that I never forget his name, Mr. Williams, old white guy, and he was getting ready to retire. So he was imparting on me, he was assigned or tasked to train me on international money transfer investigations. And Mr. Williams, I tell you, he used to write cables. Back then we had cables, telexes. And he would write it on a pad. If you had a message, let's say you send a message to Banco de Roma, for instance, about some funds that you transferred over there for a beneficiary. All right. So the Banco de Roma, if they did not pay the beneficiary claimed, there were several types of, I think, common types of what we call money transfer investigations. You had what you call the non-receipt claim, where the beneficiary never received the funds. You had incorrect amount. You had non-receipt, as I said, and you had late payments. In the case, we also handled interbank transactions back then. All right, and so anything that would go wrong with the movement of money, we will be involved. I had one case as an investigator back then where the beneficiary was a funeral home somewhere in the Midwest. I forgot exactly. But anyway, the payment went, somewhere other than where it was supposed to go. So they were holding the man's body out. So they didn't get paid. So they didn't get the transfer. So, there things like that. And it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But, back in those were carefree days. So this is where I met my wife. All right. back then, there was a coffee wagon used to come every day around 6 p.m. So I used to work late all the time, usually get in like 9 in the morning and you work till 5, 6. But I like the OT, the overtime. So I used to stay late. But anyway, the coffee wagon used to come at 6 p.m. to the 5th floor of the building that I was on at New York Plaza. And I saw this lady at the coffee wagon. And I never forget it, man. I saw this lady, man, she was built. Really. And first thing I said to her, I asked her rather, was, are you going to buy some coffee for me? And she looked at me like I was crazy, but I was in love right then when I first saw her. That turned my life around, really, that was another big fork in the road. I was young, 19, 20, 21, man, with the pressure or the mourning of my mom, what you would call a carelessness about life. I didn't think that life was, it was hard, and I had to go through it. I had to face, and not having a place to live. I used to do negative things, and I was a heavy drinker back then, smoked and all that, I did things. But I never did the heavy drugs, Marijuana was the most I would ever do. So, but one day, I'm out there on Rochester Avenue in Brooklyn, and it was a weekend, I believe, and I saw this guy standing on the corner selling meth. He was selling methadone, which is a treatment for heroin addicts. Okay, they give them methadone to help them come down or come off the addiction. But anyway, the guy, I'll never forget, they were orange color, and the guy said, "Okay, don't take the whole thing, Walter." He didn't know my name. He said, "Don't take the whole thing." I said, "Okay." So as soon as I got back to the person I was staying at's house, I took the whole thing, and I could not. I OD'd. I didn't realize I OD'd. Only thing, I could not walk for 3 days. I threw up constantly for 3 days. And looking back at it, I OD'd. And my body was rejecting it. I was very lucky. I could have been a dead guy, But fortunately, the Lord looked out for me, and that was the one and only time that something so dangerous, so to myself, my body, besides smoking cigarettes. And cigarettes was worse. Come to think of it, if you look at it now, looking back at it, cigarettes were the worst thing you could have done. Doctor told me one time that, and this is when I was very young, he said that some people can smoke and some people can't. It all comes down to you being allergic. Some people are allergic to smoking. And some people, they can smoke for 60, 70 years and they would never get sick from smoking. All right. I'm not saying they don't have heart attacks and all that kind of stuff, but, lung problems and stuff like that, no. But, yeah, there's some other stuff out there. Going back to meeting my future wife back then, it was a great time. And I had an apartment East 92nd Street in Brooklyn, where when I met my current wife. And the landlady, it was like what do you call those 2-story brick buildings, like walk-ups, right? Like the townhomes, I guess, but in Brooklyn, East New York. Anyway, I got an apartment there, and when I never forget when I moved in there, I only had a blow-up chair. I had a little record player, a little stereo, and I had a black and white TV that I brought from down south. All right, old black and white that Mom gave me. And the landlord, they stayed right there on the top floor and in the basement. I was in the middle on the ground floor. Of course, that the benefits of being a single young working man in New York back then, had major advantages. Having your own apartment And independence is a great thing. If you juxtapose that against today, a lot of young people didn't have that opportunity. They don't have that opportunity now because the prices have gone so high. But again, I digress. So I got my own apartment, and my landlady, she had a tendency to get into my business. Can you imagine your landlady, coming by your apartment and saying, "Oh, Walter, I like this girl, and I don't like that girl. I don't think he should be with this one. I think he should be with that one." I mean, come on. That was none of her business. But I can tell you one thing. When I left and moved in with my wife, I had a friend that wanted the apartment that I vacated. So I was telling the landlord, he wants an apartment, and he was thinking about, taking over this one. And the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "No way. No effing way." Because while you were here, it was like a hotel with revolving doors. Going back to working at New York Plaza, it's right across from Battery Park. It's right there in Lower Manhattan. The Staten Island Ferry is right around the corner. So I never forget one day, I met with some friends, co-workers, and we would go over to the park, Battery Park, and we sit on the benches, look at the water, look at the tourists and all this kind of stuff, eat lunch. One day, when we were over there, some guy asked me, say, "Hey, Walter, you ever smoke marijuana?" I said, I've tried, but it doesn't do anything for me. I don't feel anything from it. So he said, "No, try this. But maybe you don't know how to smoke. Let me show you." He said, "Take it, inhale, and hold. Inhale and hold. And then exhale." All right. I inhale and I hold. But anyway, that was lunch hour. When I got back to my job at Chase on the 5th floor, and I stopped by the men's room before I went back to my desk, and I started laughing. And I was laughing, man. I mean, really, I was laughing. I'm glad nobody was in the bathroom at the time, but I was laughing. So I had to go in the stall, and I'm laughing. So I said to myself, okay, I got to get back to work. I'm late from coming back from lunch. So anyway, I go to open the bathroom door, and I start laughing again. So I had to close the door and go back into the stall and finish laughing. Then I was standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom. I'm laughing. It took me about an hour to get over that urge or that laughter. I couldn't stop laughing. That was the first time that marijuana had an effect on me, that I really felt it. So, I mean, down south, we didn't even have any marijuana. Well, if they did, I didn't know about it. I know at college, on the college campuses, yes. But in my little old town of Williamston, nah, I didn't know. If they did, I didn't know anything about it. I got my glasses, passed the eye test, and then they hired me. And went upstairs, and it was assigned to my job. There was about maybe 100 people in my department. Money transfer investigation, essential inquiries and adjustments. That's what they call the investigations department at that time. With anything, when you're young, you have a tendency to party, hardy, and forget that you got to go to work the next day. So literally what I used to do is, I work late, then I go out and party right from there, right from New York Plaza, all night. Get home like 5 in the morning. It was too late to go to bed. All right, because if you went to bed, you wouldn't wake up. So I just took a shower, changed, and then went right back to work. Back then, Chase had a movie theater, and they had the cafeteria. So what I would do on my lunch hour, I would go up and watch a quarter of a movie. Because they would show a movie over a 5-day period, for example. All right, so you saw a part every day until you finished the movie. And that was cool back then. Can you imagine working in a place that you can watch a movie? Those were the good old days. I hear people talk about the good old days. That's what I'm talking about back then.